100 gold, if I need to hire some construction folks and get some materials together and, utilize it, that's going to take me pretty far. I can fix up a lot of this.
Yeah, I think the quest would then take you on how do you find the Masons Guild and how do you hire them out?
We got one more thing to do here, and that is to talk a little bit about this Reddit post that I saw. You might know that a little while ago we did, I think, a Saturday special, and it was about the idea of your party owning and operating like a bar or a tavern or a shop, a magic shop, the odds and ends magic shop, and organizing a campaign basically around making the business work.
Right.
And so it was funny for me because I saw this and it reminded me of it, but under like needing advice. So my players heard about how in some campaigns DMs let players own real estate, so they have in their heads to buy a bar in Waterdeep. Granted, they don't think they have the money, so they are currently planning a bank heist. Of course they are. My question is, how much does a bar cost, and what are the mechanics for upkeep and such?
I feel like those are in the rule book.
I think they are. It's actually one of the comments down below. If you have access to Waterdeep Dragon Heist, there's a big chunk about the party getting a bar and inn. I think that there are some rules in that supplement that talks a little bit about that. I was always a little confused, though, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it, is that in a lot of these games, the amount of money that you are getting and using for your adventurers seems completely disproportionate from the economy at large.
Yes, very.
Like, your great sword could buy like a mansion. Like in a lot of
maybe not a mansion, but if you look at how much people earn, like a laborer earns per day,
yeah,
in D&D's economic breakdown, it's not a whole lot.
No.
And so you with 100 gold, basically you come in and you go give someone a gold on a table, and you've paid their monthly salary.
Yeah.
Essentially. Because they're like, oh, we make a couple silver a day. And it's like, oh, I just made 3,000 gold killing this goblin.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Domestic life means nothing to me now.
So it's like, I've got 10,000 gold. I'm walking into this town. And they're like, you can buy the whole town and everyone in it.
Yeah, it's not going to be very difficult to buy a shop or something else.
Especially in smaller towns. I imagine maybe in a big city that's a huge center, a metropolis with a lot of people and merchants and stuff. That might be a little pricier, but even still. If you've got thousands of gold, tens of thousands of gold.
Right.
Waterdeep is not going to be an issue. You can buy a bar in Waterdeep.
Absolutely. I remember when I was playing 1879, and I was an inventor. Like, that was, I was technically a weird scientist, but, what I did was I made little gadgets and stuff and put magic inside of them, essentially, and threw them out into the world. And so, after we went on this adventure in South America to, like, the Aztec step pyramids and stuff, we get back, and I get paid my stipend and everything, and for the time period, what I've gotten paid for that is a not inconsiderable sum. Like, I've been given something like what amounts to like 30, 40, 50 pounds, which, in, 1800s money, is pretty impressive for even the time that I've been away. And I think to myself, well, hey, I need a place where I can actually build this stuff and maybe make actual schematics and stuff, and I'm gonna see if I can buy a shop in London. And so Andy basically was like, yeah, we'll try to figure this out. But yeah, I was able to use essentially money that I got not just to buy a shop, in London, but also to hire a few laborers that would be able to do some of the basic work, and also to have a mass of scrap that would be delivered to me that I'd be able to utilize for a lot of the creations, and that would pretty much cover me for like 3 or 4 months. Like I could pretty much rent this place out and have all of this for 3 or 4 months. And my plan was eventually like, well, if I can do production and I have people that can work on stuff while I'm away, and I have designs that would be interested to everybody else, which I think my portable terrine that I created, like a camp terrine or whatever for cooking, if I could create those and I could sell those, on the market, it would pretty much pay for itself. But I could just upkeep it with passive income. I was creating a passive income simulator inside of my game. But the fun part about that is that there is something very neat about being able to own a home, own a bar, own something, because adventurers, by and large, make a ton of cash relative to the economy.
And the thing is, you want to give, in that sense, players want something to spend that money on.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, especially for like 5e D&D, there's not a lot to spend your gold on in large sums, because it's not a super magic weapon heavy system, and they're harder to find.
Yeah.
And even so, when you've got 30,000 gold, it's like, I have all the weapons and armor I need.
Right.
It's like,
what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? What are you going to do with that money? So it's like finding something that players are willing to sink money into and is important to them, and then you could use as a story beat later. Like perhaps you buy a house, perhaps you pull the Skyrim and you go to Falkreath and get that house out in the Reach. You know?
You Hearthstone, right? Or not Hearthstone. God, I can't remember what it's called, but that expansion where you can build your house. Hearthfire. There we go. I was half right.
So perhaps you buy your house out in Falkreath, and then bandits attack because there's this house there in the middle of nowhere. It's like, cool, this looks like a nice place. Let's ransack it. So now you've got to defend your home. So the same thing with like D&D or any RPG. If you give players something to be invested in and are monetarily invested in, they're going to defend it tooth and nail.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I like the idea of, like, I don't necessarily think that I would build something out in the sticks or build a house out in the sticks, but I do like the idea, especially if you are a rogue or anything like that, of building buying a place that's, like, in the city. Like, I keep thinking back to, like, Fable. Because in Fable, there would be this whole thing where buildings could come up for sale if there was no owner, and you could buy... You could eventually buy, like, the whole town in Fable 2 and 3.
And then you would make rent.
You would rent out a bunch of places. But I thought would be really interesting is if you were, like, a thief or something like that, and you get to a town, and you're like, I'm going to set up operations here, and they don't have, like, a thieves guild. Why not just build a thieves guild? And then I'll get a place, and then I'll spend money on renovations on the DL to make, like, a catacombs underneath, so that I can build, like, essentially like the Rift in Sewers thieves guild underneath the building, and have a front, or have a storefront of some kind that I'd be able to use. Where you could pawn the stuff that you steal. Yeah, that would be fun. But for any kind of character class that seems like it would work, you would imagine that if you can just buy a place and then you could renovate it out, or, build in your secret stashes or your secret places. If you have, like, holy relics and you need a place to store them, you could build essentially like your Ghostbusters kind of scenario where you know, I can actually take the time, set down roots so that I can build my, tank so that I can keep all the spirits of my enemies or whatever in there, whatever you're doing. I would think about doing stuff like that, or buy a shop front so that maybe I can actually pawn off some of the random knickknacks that I came across on my journey.
I feel like what you should do as players is, instead of buying a property, you should take and clear out an old dungeon or a tower or something like that full of monsters. Clear it out entirely and then call it your own. Just be like, we claim this.
Yeah,
I don't see why you can't. Who owns it? Nobody. Monsters have infested it. It's ours now.
Hey, you remember when we dealt with those were-rats? We should
Yeah.
have just taken that silver mine.
It was a gold mine.
It was a gold mine? Oh, that's right. It was a gold mine. That's right.
I mean, somebody else already actually owned that.
Oh, yeah. Damn it. Oh, but you know what? But the ruins. We came across those ruins that were just...
Kill all the orcs.
Yeah. That had like a shrine and stuff in it. That was kind of cool.
You could have been like, we're gonna invest money to fix this place up.
Imagine if I had like 100 gold, right? And I say I want to fix up this old shrine. 100 gold. If I need to hire some construction folks and get some materials together and utilize it, that's gonna take me pretty far. I can fix up a lot of this.
Yeah, I think the quest would then take you on how do you find the Masons Guild and how do you hire them out.
That's what you would have to do after that. But, I mean, I keep thinking like that, especially if you find something where it seems like it's a significant location, you might want to utilize it to some degree, especially if you end up with like horses. Where are you going to stable the horses, right?
Yeah.
You kind of need a place at some point where you can keep them, or chests for all of the random stuff. If you care about weight requirements, then you're probably going to need to think about like, how am I going to store all this extra stuff? There was like a big ass gold bell that we had to take. That ain't light,
No.
You got to figure out where you're going to store this stuff until you can actually do it. So I don't know. Here's encouraging folks to just take over old abandoned shrines and temples.
And just spend your money on things that can return profit.
Yeah. This is a great repurposing for dungeons. Can you imagine? I like this idea. Imagine if you were a real estate agent in like the world of Faerun, and you're like going up to like these like Ankeg nests or these dark dank sewers or wherever, and you're kind of like going, okay, so look, it's a bit of a fixer-upper, but I can tell you that you have water on demand right there. It's running right through. The stonework is fantastic here. Really old, very ancient. There's a summoning circle.
I think it'd be more fun to sell it to the monsters.
Yeah, sell it to the monsters.
It's like, look, if you don't take this, I got a group of orcs who are willing to move in tomorrow.
We had another set of buyers, but they already fell into all of the traps. So the traps are already disarmed, okay? We're not even going to charge you for that. The trap disarming service, free. We're going to toss that in. Going back to the basic question was just, how much does a bar cost? Probably not enough to make it, like, a realistic system in the game. But then again, if you're a treasure hunter in the real world and you're successful at it, if you were actually successful at it as a treasure hunter, you could probably afford a bar. Page 128 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. Here we go. Building a stronghold. Yeah, okay, trading post. Okay, keep outpost. Intriguingly enough, none of these really mention anything about a bar or a tavern, which you would think would be like, maybe the guild hall would count. You could like repurpose a guild hall, and it's like 5,000 and it's 60-day construction.
These aren't even great prices.
No.
I feel like you could do better.
Yeah.
I think at one point in time I wanted to do something like this, but better, where the campaign was like building an outpost on a new frontier, essentially.
You only need
where it's like you just build a town.
Yeah.
But you have to gather materials. But that would be a completely different campaign at that point. That'd be like, you're not just adventurers, you are like artisans and town builders. And it would be more a strategic game than an RPG at that point, and I don't know if people would want that.
Yeah. I love the fact that I can buy an abbey for 50,000 gold.
Right?
I love that I can buy a palace, a large castle or a palace you can buy for 500,000. That's the most expensive one. So I'm thinking, here's what you do. Great idea for a campaign if you care about economics, is you actually set up and build a town from scratch. And you basically have a whole, like, maybe like 1 million gold is what you can spend on this. But you can't obviously put it all in at one time, but there's itemized things that you can buy.
That sounds a lot. That's kind of why I didn't do this, is because it becomes a lot of how much do all the materials I need cost? Am I buying
Exactly.
them? Or it's like, well, if you're setting up a new frontier, you're probably only shipping over a few materials to set up a few basic places, and then the first thing you're building is a sawmill.
Right. Which then speeds up your time frame for anything else.
And then you're deforesting, and I thought about this a bunch. I did look into, like, things, and I was like, oh, there are different types of building you can do. There's like beam and stone beam, and there's wooden beam, and then there's post and beam, and then there's balloon frame, which is apparently the type of framing we now currently use in most houses, is a balloon frame.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, there's a lot here, and I'm like, this is a lot of research.
Yeah.
So I did look into that, clearly.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea of building the frontier town, though, like out there.
I think it's definitely, I still like the idea, because honestly, it'd be like, cool, you're in it, like, you're on a beachfront, you're gonna go in a bit, you're gonna take apart the boat, maybe, probably not take apart the boat,
right.
But you're gonna be like, all right, we've got our supplies for like 2 months, we're gonna build this little outpost here, you guys come back in a month.
Yep.
And the first thing you're doing is clearing out, killing monsters, like identifying plants. You're explorers, but you're also like building this town.
Yep. Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting. I think there are not a lot of rules to support helping that, because like you'd have cost of material, a type of material you need. You'd have a stone cost, a wood cost for buildings, or clay, depending. You'd have different types of resources. So you'd have resource management, town building, and an RPG.
Right.
Which
exactly.
Some players would be into, some players would not be, and balancing out how you do the sessions would be interesting. Are we playing the RPG or are we town building today?
Right. I think in similar fashion, I think when we were talking about the bar, I think we determined that like if you were running a tavern, maybe there were expansions to the tavern that would cost so much and might need certain resources in order to build them, and that by building that, there are new options available. Like you get something for it. You maybe you get bonuses to certain interactions that you would have, or certain characters that would show up. But then also that there's certain story hooks and beats that would unlock depending on what upgrades you had done. Like if you have like a gambling hall in the back of the tavern, it's going to attract a certain character that's going to come along and activate a quest line that you can go down. But would also potentially give you, maybe advantage on luck rolls that deal with like dice games and stuff like that. Like there'd be different things like that were piecemealed out by expansions to the main thing, to simplify it a little bit and to more or less focus back on the characters getting something out of it and the players, getting to advance the storyline.
Yeah.
I think you could do that. You just expand it out to a town too. But at any rate, if anyone's wondering, to get back to the actual question we were answering, apparently a bar is, I think you'd equate it to a guild hall, honestly, which is like 5,000, maybe call it 10 because you got permits and stuff you got to put in.
Sure.
Why not 10K? Call it.
Sure.
Doable. Oh, very doable. You can make that happen, no problem. Or rent it out. Maybe you can rent instead of buy. In this economy, you bet. Anyway, folks, if you have a better answer to how much a bar should cost, or tavern, should we use them interchangeably? I don't know.
Pub.
Pub.
They're all the same thing.
A pub. A watering hole.
An establishment.
Yes. The Waterdeep watering hole.
Watering deep hole.
The deep hole. Just call it the deep hole. If any of you have some thoughts on what it should have actually cost, let us know. But I think best I can tell you is it's probably around 10. Probably around 10.
Yeah.
Very doable. Surprised that more people don't bother to make that happen.